We now come to one that is quite a bit of fun actually. We are going to look at galleries. Now there are many different kinds, and I'm going to start with this one right here. So I just clicked on it and it appeared right here, and what I need to do before everything else is I need to click here, go to Manage Media, and then say Select All, because these are all Wix's stupid photographs that we don't want, obviously. Then I'm going to say Delete. Now I can add different things to any Wix gallery, not just this one. I can add images, I can add videos, and I can add text. Now I'm going to go to the image part, and I'm just going to go in here and just select a bunch of cats, and then I'm going to go back and select a bunch of food. Let's see, like so. And then I'm going to go back and also select some of these stretching thingies. Now that I have all of these, I can move them around wherever I want. So let's say I want to drag this one in here, and this one in here, and then this one between the two cats here. And unfortunately I can't stretch this out. I have to sort of work in a confined area. I wish they changed that, but I think it has something to do with the HTML technology actually. Not sure about that, but for some reason with most HTML stuff, you are kind of stuck with this confined area in which you are working. Let's see, and then let me just this one here, I'm just going to drag up here and then drag one more time so that it's between all the other cats. So now I have a nice collage of different kinds of images. Now on all of the Wix galleries, not just this one, you need to edit the title, because it'll just be that image extension with the JPEG behind it, or the PNG or whatever that you don't really want. So I'm going to call this one Fat Cat, for example. If you have a description, you add that in as well. And this is busy work, I know. People hate to do it, but hey, it has to be done, because it will actually appear in your when you view the site. So you need to go in and change all of these here. What you can also add, like I said, you can add videos. I don't have any, but you can also add videos that you link to from YouTube or Vimeo or whatever. But I'm not. Let me just click on it. Upload, YouTube, Vimeo, and then you do whatever you normally would do. But then another thing you can do is also you can add text. So I'm just going to let's see. I think I already have text here, but for some funny reason it's white on white, which is kind of not terribly helpful. I'm just going to increase the opacity here and also make this a bit darker, and then I'm going to just change this text to something like Fat Cat lives here or whatever. Now with this text you can change the box padding. You can align it vertically or horizontally or from the middle. And then what you can also do is when you go here, you can change the font. So let's see, I used Syra once, didn't I? So let me just make this, it won't show here, but it will show when you are viewing it. You can make the font bigger or smaller. Nothing much else that you can do here. You can align it left, right, whatever, middle. You can make it italic, you can underline it, you can make it bold, all the obvious things. And then you can also change the layout of this text box. You can make it horizontal, you can make it vertical, and then you can also make it custom, which means that you can play with the ratio of it. So let me just bring this back to the center. For some reason it doesn't want to go to the center. Now it went to the center. So now I'm just going to add this to the gallery. It'll appear all the way at the bottom, so I would need to move it up to wherever I want it to. And this can also be quite long pieces of text, incidentally. It doesn't just have to be things like headlines. Let's see, let me put it here. So, done. Now what you can do is you can stretch this gallery to full width, so that, and the text, as you can see, is now Syra and not that other font that we just saw there. But now that we have all the stuff in here, we can go to settings. Oh, and incidentally, when you stretch it to full width, then you can also, if you want to, just give it a border if you want. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave it at full width. Now, when we go to the settings, first we have the layout. And we can change the layout from here actually also. But before I do that, I'm just going to go in here and show you all the things that you can do. Now the thumbnail, now first of all, let's look at the image ratio. Right now it's a square, but we can also make this 4:3 or 16:9, or we can make them vertical and 3:4. Let's stick with 4:3. Now you can fit them to the screen, which makes this gallery responsive, and I will get to that in a separate video where I talk about responsive websites and non-responsive websites. But if I fit it to the screen, then I have to decide on a thumbnail size, and essentially what that will mean is that on narrower browsers these images will configure themselves. But then I can also set items per row, and there the maximum that I can go up to is actually 5. I can't go any higher, but then you wouldn't want to, because it'll just end up looking like a thumbnail gallery. So you would want to keep that at something like 3 or 4. So let's keep it at 4. And let's see, if you want to have a load more button, which means that you only have a certain amount of rows, and then the rest is going to load, you can do that. I hardly ever do it, but you can if you want to. The thumbnail resize can be a crop or a fit, but if it's a fit, then you will end up getting stuff like this, because it will try to fit everything, and so it will give you huge spaces. The scroll direction can be vertical or horizontal. If it's horizontal, then basically this actually turns into a slider strip, so you wouldn't really want that, because there are slider galleries that are separate from the one that we have here, so you would actually be using one of those. And let's see, what else do we have here? Well, we can change the layout, but I'm going to come to that later. Now, here it asks us, when we go to settings, it asks us, do I want to open this in expand mode? When I click on the image, on one of the images, do I want a link to open? Do I want nothing to happen? Or do I want it to open in full screen? So let's just stay on open expand mode. Do I want to allow people to download the images? I could. Do I want social sharing icons to be visible? They have the heart icon open by default. I don't like the heart icon, but you can keep this open, and then it will show you a heart, and then if you click this show with counter, then it will show you how many times people have actually loved this image. I think this is kind of stupid, so I usually leave it unchecked, but it's entirely up to you, of course. Let me leave it checked for now so that we can actually see all of these buttons. Now, when it comes to the design, this is obviously a topic for another day, because right now we are not talking about design during these small tutorials that I'm making. We are only talking about how everything works. But basically, now it kind of showed me what this is going to look like in hover mode. By default, for some strange reason, they have this really ugly gray. I can never understand what that is all about, but what I normally do is I make the overlay white, and then I change it to a really, really low value, so that when I hover over the images, it just turns very, very slightly white. But then you can, with that overlay, you can also choose an effect. So let me choose expand, for example, and let's then look at how this looks. It's talking about the overlay coverage. Now with the text, you can decide what the title, if you're going to show the title on the image, underneath the image, above the image, on the image. Now obviously we can see that this is really horrendously ugly text. So what we would be doing, what happens to the info on hover? It appears, it disappears, or there's no change. Let's leave it at appears. Now title style and color is small heading. I'm going to actually change that to the paragraph so that this actually becomes, and look, here's what happens. All of these files names with the extensions, that's what you will see as titles if you have all of this. So that is why you want to actually rename your images to whatever you want them to be. Now horizontal alignment, do I want them to be on the left, in the middle, or on the right? Let's leave them on the left. Do I want them to be in the middle or the bottom? Usually the bottom is the best place for these kinds of things. I can also move this text up like this if I want to, and then I can also move it in if I want to. Let's see. So this is the title. Now as for the description, if I want to also see the description font style is paragraph 2. Let me make that something even smaller. Let me make it paragraph 3 so that it's smaller, but I can also manually adjust all of these values. So let me make that 12, and obviously this Helvetica would probably not be the font that you're using. You would be using your own font, in which case all of these paragraph values would already be adjusted. Now advanced image quality, this you should keep at 90. You shouldn't really bring this up to 100. Image sharpening you should leave off. With the videos, play on hover. If you have videos, this is not a good idea. Just put them on click. Do you want to loop videos? Do you want to show the play button, the gallery direction, left to right, right to left? You would want to have that left to right normally, because that's how we read things anyway. And then if you have questions, then you can ask Wix what your questions are. So now let me just close this, and let's just have a preview. So when I go on them, they have a very, very slight lightening, and then this overlay kind of moves in from the inside to the outside. Let me actually make this a little bit less opaque so that you can actually see it a little bit better. Let's go to like 18 maybe, and let's redo the preview. So as you can see, it has a very, very slight animation on it, and then when you click go hover over them, then it actually becomes visible. Now let's go back to here. Let's go back to layout. Now I have the grid, but I can change this. I can change this to, let's say, something called Masonry, which is a different kind of arrangement. It isn't, or everything isn't aligned. And then you would be customizing the layout with those things as well. Here the gallery orientation is actually going to change things, unlike the grid one. But then on the bottom you will have a rag, which as far as I'm concerned is no problem. However, some people don't like that, and they fool around with it forever and ever until it gets completely aligned. I wouldn't worry about it so much personally. Now I'm going to do this fit to screen so that we can actually look at what happens when we align it. So the thumbnail size right now is 43. So let me just leave it like that, and let's give it a preview. So when we have the full screen, then this gallery looks like this. Now what happens if I narrow it down? So let me just actually go back to almost full so that we can see the difference. Up to a certain point, the gallery will adjust itself to the size of the screen. But that will only happen up to a certain point, and then it will reconfigure itself, as you can see here. And then if I come in a little bit more, it will grid self a little bit more even, and then a little bit more. Well, it stopped right here. But once we reach this width of 1024, then it will stop being responsive, and then it will just actually start cutting into the images. But up until a certain point, the gallery is actually responsive. That's what, when I go back here, if you click on the settings again, and then customize layout, if I go fit to screen, and then the thumbnail size is going to determine that responsiveness. Now if I set items per row, and I have 4, let's say, let's look at it again. And then make it smaller, then it will just keep the 4, but then again it will only do it up to a certain point, and the images will just get bigger or smaller. Now with the fit to screen, they were actually changing the stacking. So at a certain point it started stacking itself differently, but when I have it just 4 thumbnails, it will always be in the same order, but they will just become progressively smaller or bigger. Now let's go back here, and let's go back to settings, and go back to layout, and look at another one, which is the collage one, which actually looks quite similar to the Masonry one, and also it drags at the bottom just like the Masonry one. And then if I make this horizontal, and then I can decrease the thumbnail size or increase the thumbnail size. There's the spacing between the images, which you can make bigger or smaller. Personally, I like to keep that spacing very, very low, something like 2 or 3 or 4, and not more, because then the collage effect actually becomes a lot nicer. Now you can increase the collage density or decrease it, and that will also change things. However, you always have to be aware of the fact that what you are seeing is not necessarily what the person who is viewing the website is seeing, because their browser width may be different from yours. So let me close this, and let's give it another preview, and let's reduce it and see what happens. So up to a certain point it's going to shift things around, but then at a certain point it will stop working, and because that's the point where you hit the page width. Now let's just look at a couple more. So if I make this thumbnails, then what will happen is that the first image will be huge, and then all the others will arrange themselves as thumbnails. Now if you choose to do this, then usually doing it full size may not be such a good idea unless you have really, really large sized and nice looking images. But then also, if you choose to do this, let me just drag this other strip down a bit so that we have room. Then I would definitely make the gallery bigger so that we actually see more of the cat. So if you have the thumbnail thing, probably a smart thing to do is to release the stretch to full width and actually make it just page width, because then you will have a much easier time with the images. However, I'm going to go back to that because I'm actually not done yet. I want to look at a couple of other layouts as well. Now you can have a slider, in which case you have this, and when you reduce the height of the slider, the images are actually going to get smaller and more of them will fit side by side. So, and remember when we were looking at the first one and I said, well, actually I wouldn't use it like this because I would actually be using a slider gallery from the beginning. You can have a slideshow, but then for this I would actually use the actual slideshow app, to which I will come to in a minute. You can have the whole thing go in strips, which would make it absolutely enormous. You could have the whole thing go in columns, which would make it go like this. So there really is a wealth of stuff that you can do with the galleries. Now one thing to bear in mind is that Now, from here you can change a lot of the layouts. However, there are certain things that, certain other galleries that you can't change from here. So if you go back to this here, there are some galleries here, like these ones here, for example, which are kind of like leftover from the olden days, or the slide deck, or let's see, what else do we have here that you would not be able to access from that menu, the slider, the postcard slider, the arrow slider, and so on and so forth. Those you would, or these things here, the freestyle, or the 3D slideshow, or the carousel, those you would need to add separately. You could not change those from here. Here. So those you would need to add separately, and that's really all I want to say about the galleries right now. Like I said, in terms of the design, in terms of the text that goes into them, or like as little text boxes, or as descriptions, or image titles, and so on and so forth, those are the subject of an actual design tutorial, and not this one right here. This one ends here and now, and then we will look at slideshows next.